Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are very excited to welcome you to the 5th webinar in our series Tools for Peace. Today's webinar is titled 7 Steps to Conflict De-escalation. I am Claudia. I'm part of the team at the International Secretariat of Service Civil International, and I'm one of the moderators today. My colleague, Ed, is also here to support the technical parts and the Q&A later on. Before we get started, a few technical announcements. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel. But don't worry, because your camera and mic are off, so we can't see you or hear you in the meanwhile. The webinar lasts 90 minutes. Iolanda and Adrian, our guests today, will present 60 minutes, and then we would have 30 minutes for Q&A. In the meantime, you can send your questions anytime in the Q&A box. They will be answered later during the Q&A part. Chat will be open for you to interact, and Adrian and Iolanda will have some questions for you, so feel free. But if you have a question for the Q&A, please ask it in the Q&A box, and it will make it easier for us to answer your questions at the end. And please note that no certificate will be delivered at the end of this webinar. Now, I'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce who is behind the organization of this webinar today. We are the International Secretariat of Service Civil International, or SCI, which is a volunteer organization dedicated to promoting a culture of peace by organizing international voluntary projects for people of all ages and backgrounds. SCI is open to all and has no political or religious affiliation. We envision a world of peace, social justice, and sustainable development where all people live together with mutual respect and without recourse to any form of violence to solve conflict. Our volunteering projects include work camps, long-term volunteering projects, training courses, and local events. Today's webinar is part of one of our projects called Peace in Diversity, and it's co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Peace in Diversity aims to build the capacity of volunteers, activists, and youth workers on peace and non-violence that will support their work with diverse groups, teams, and communities. The project includes 3 main activities, 2 in-person training courses that already took place, and today we are welcoming you to the 3rd activity of the project, the Tools for Peace webinar series. It is a series of online events aimed at equipping young people with practical skills for practicing peace, conflict transformation, and nonviolent communication in diverse communities. We were motivated to share some of the learnings from our projects with a wider audience, and that's why we are here today with you. The webinars are meant to be practical, where you will have the opportunity to immediately implement the learning outcomes in your private and professional life. So here today, we meet with Iolanda and Adrian, who are going to talk about the 7 steps to conflict de-escalation. So over to you, Iolanda and Adrian, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you as well, Claudia, Eve, and all the colleagues at the SCI. Thank you so much for the invitations. Thank you for having us, and also thank you to the attendees of this session. We have a PowerPoint presentation to share, but first of all, we'd like to introduce ourselves. So I'm Iolanda Vasile. I work as a social scientist, but also as an NGO practitioner. I have a strong focus on gender mainstreaming and post-colonial studies. But besides my work in academia, I've also spent years developing educational programs on human rights, post-colonial studies, decolonial studies in various contexts. And for me, it's all about bridging the theory and the real world impact. So I'm very happy to be here and learn from you and with you. So I'll leave it to Adrian to introduce himself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adrian Frandish, clinical psychologist by training with a major patient for Ericksonian hypnosis, NLP, and systemic psychotherapy. And over the year, I have the privilege to work with very closely with a lot of vulnerable youth, from refugees and asylum seekers to neurodiverse and LGBTI plus communities across Spain, Romania, and UK. A lot of my work focuses on coaching and counseling, but I also love designing workshops that help people reframe their challenges from a systemic perspective. I'm really excited to share some of those insights with you today and really appreciate the contact and the collaboration with SEI.
Okay, so with a bit of patience from your side, I'm going to share my presentation, our presentation. I think you can see it now, right? Full screen. Okay. So as you know, today's session is going to cover the 7 steps to conflict de-escalation, and we're going to try to offer practical techniques for resolving conflicts in group settings, while also considering, of course, the mental health challenges that may arise in youth workers or peace workers and other professionals working in NGOs. Who are working in such sensitive, high-stress, difficult contexts. We start from the assumption that most of you work in NGOs. So one common assumption when we speak about a specific topic is that we refer to the same things. Well, it is not true, of course. We all come from different socio-cultural, ethnic, economic, and of course, historical backgrounds that shape the way we see the world and the way we understand it. So with this in mind, and as in any other socio-anthropological endeavor, we want to invite you to look at the questions that we have here on the screen so that we can establish common ground here and to see if we're speaking from the same point of view. So we would like to invite you to take over the chat and try to answer very shortly to these questions. The first one being, what do you understand by conflict de-escalation? So please use one word to describe it, and we'll leave you a bit of time to do so. The other question will be, what type of conflict do you address in your daily work? And it can be any type of conflicts. As we would see further on, we have multiples, or we can have multiple types of conflicts in our professional lives. Not in the last place, what is the goal of conflict de-escalation? Why these questions? Because they're going to be addressed actually throughout this webinar. And we're going to try and find answers to it besides setting the ground, starting with this. So we started from this general idea that what conflict de-escalation means and the different types of conflict that exist. And also we started from the assumption that many of you or all of you are working in NGOs. So the presentation was designed with this in mind. So after, and I see some questions already being answered in the chat. We're gonna look at it after. At the end, we're gonna look at the answers. Now we're gonna invite you to do a little bit of a first individual exercise. Considering, as we said, that we are all NGO professionals, and building on the previous idea that our backgrounds inform and shape us, we invite you to reflect on what point of view are you speaking from. And of course, we're not referring here only to geographical points of view, but instead more of your locus of enunciation. That means your biases. So what are those preconceived opinions, attitudes, preferences that influence the way we perceive, interpret, and react to other people, to the situations around us, and at large with the world around us? So this type of exercise is actually an invitation to self-reflection and will help us further become more aware of the point of view and the biases that often accompany us. So hopefully this will be part of understanding better where or any type of conflict might come from, and how we can better work and de-escalate it. I'm sure many of you are perfectly aware that conflict de-escalation comes with mental health challenges, especially since we're speaking about people in vulnerable contexts. And this may happen due to trauma, displacement, uncertainty, among other things. And these mental health concerns, such as, for instance, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and for instance, survival guilt, they can significantly impact conflict resolution efforts. And once more, mental health is at the core of how we deal with conflict resolution. So in addition, us as NGO workers and professionals, we may also experience different types of exposure to trauma, burnout, or fatigue while working with conflict de-escalation. And I invite you to keep this in mind because we're going to pick on it later. So first of all, when speaking about conflict, we have to think two major things. One is, what type of conflict am I addressing, am I speaking about? And I'm not gonna state them, but you have it on the screen. We have here some main examples of the type of conflicts that you may encounter in your workplace. And besides of the type of conflicts, we also have to think of the nature of a conflict. If we're speaking about the conflict that's immediate, that's latent, or it's something that's transversal to a situation, permanent. So with this in mind, I would like to invite my colleague Adrian to speak about the 7 steps to conflict de-escalation, actually to give us an introduction and move further to detailing.
Well, keeping in mind the mental health issues that often present when working with people that experience a lot of trauma, distress, displacement, or literally come from difficult background, we have to take in account that the goal is not only to address the surface level conflicts, but also to consider underlying emotional wounds, rebuild trust, and create a sense of safety. Okay, so the first step towards creating a safe space communication would be actually to understand what means a safe space. And it's a space where you literally try to mediate what's happening between 1, 2, or more people in general. One of the things that I think we would have to bear in mind is that people in conflict situation may have a heightened sense of hypervigilance, fear, and distrust due to past trauma. And for example, I want you to imagine for a couple of seconds that you're mediating a conflict between 2 refugee teenagers, one from Syria and one from Ethiopia. Both of them may have experienced significant trauma related to violence, displacement, and loss. One of these teenagers may be easily triggered by loud noises, feeling as if they're back in a dangerous situation, while the other might react with very avoidant behavior, especially when faced with conflict. Now, how to create safety in this particular setting, and what is actually safe space, okay? Probably most of you know that it should be a space where you can express yourself honestly without fear or discrimination, judgment, or exclusion. Another thing that would be important in order to create this safe space would be the physical environment. So always make sure that the room is neutral, welcoming, and free from any sort of distractions. Another thing that probably would be also useful to take in consideration when we talk about the space is, for example, consider non-threatening setting arrangements. For example, circle chairs, or I don't know, putting very clear ground rules so that they know exactly what's going to be talked about, and give the time for each of them to explain exactly what they feel and how they feel. So in other words, to have that opportunity to speak where there will be no judgment or retaliation. And when we talk about this, we actually speak about emotional safety. And you could even use something like, in this particular space, everyone's voice matters. We're here to listen to each other with respect. Well, in other words, what we're doing, we're acknowledging their emotions, that they are valid, but also underline that is a space for respectful communication. Another aspect that we should use when we talk about creating a safe space is NVC, or nonviolent communication, which can help people to express their emotion without feeling judged. Very important, I always underline this, it's talking about cultural sensitivity and recognizing the importance of cultural norms. For example, in some refugee communities, the eye contact may be seen as a sign of disrespect, especially in situations involving authority figures. So acknowledge and respect these differences up front, and if possible, see cultural interpreters to help you not just translate, but understand how these people function and on what their norms or rules or rituals are. Now, mental health consideration that you should take in account: hypervigilance, being excessively alert to potential threats, can lead to overreaction in a conflict. As a mediator or as a person working with these people, use gentle, calm voice, create a low stress environment, introduce relaxation techniques before starting the mediation, like deep breathing, grounding exercise, or whatever you know that would be useful to help these participants feel safe. And an additional tip for war or discrimination context would be to keep in mind that the emotional safety is paramount. People may be traumatized or deeply distrustful of others, and in this case, it's crucial to introduce the idea of psychological safety, allowing people to express vulnerability while providing the necessary emotional support, because this will lay the ground for successful mediation and resolution of any sort of conflict.
And we're gonna move further to the second step, which means active listening of our peers, of the people we're working with, but also of other people that are involved in conflict situations in the context that we are working. So what does it mean? It actually means fully engaging with the speaker, showing empathy, showing that we understand their feelings, validating. So, of course, you know that active listening means no interruptions, reflecting back what the other person has just said to show that we understand them. So this second step becomes even more important. So when we're working with people in conflict areas or in situations that are usually very conflictive, so people that can have emotionally intense reactions to conflict, so their responses might be linked with underlying mental health challenges such as anxiety or trauma responses. So once again, we take the example of two teenagers, but we can speak about adults as well, where one feels that their family has not received enough assistance, for instance, after their arrival at the refugee camp. the other teenager or the other person who's from a different ethnic background feels also ignored because they do not share the same experience. So in this example, how can we practice active listening? First of all, as I was saying, by reflecting emotions. So as a mediator, we can say, I hear that you're feeling frustrated because you think your family's needs aren't being met. It's understandable to feel upset when you see others getting help that you believe should go to you or to your family. Besides saying this, we have to always pay attention at the nonverbal cues like nodding, empathetic facial expressions to reinforce the fact that we're listening carefully. And of course, we have to restate for clarity, and this goes in any type of conflictive situation, to make sure that by restating what was just said, we clarify, we give clarity. So for instance, it sounds like both of you feel that your needs haven't been addressed equally in this situation. So let's unpack this further. Okay, so also involving the other part. What we have to keep in mind when speaking about mental health consideration in relation to active listening, as I was mentioning before, the possibility of anxiety, anger, trauma response, flashback, dissociation, these all can result in heightened emotional reactions. So what can we do to balance this situation is to act with patience and the willingness to sit with discomfort. This is paramount. And as a mediator, we have to use techniques such as mirroring, rephrasing, to show that the persons involved in the conflict understand what we are saying, what the other part is saying, and to try and keep everyone calm. So basically, active listening helps us acknowledging feelings of mistrust and fear. And this can be one of the first steps in moving forward. And we have to say that these steps can be, we didn't mention it at the beginning, but these steps can be followed one by one as we are presenting it, or they can be picked up and mix and match it as you go along the way, depending on the type and nature of the situation that you're handling, of the conflict. So we move further to step 3, please, Adrian.
Which would be acknowledging emotions. And this is crucial, especially when dealing with trauma survivors. People sometimes not always have the words to express their emotions. It's not just that they don't have the words, but sometimes they can't identify them. And they might show distress in indirect ways, like becoming very withdrawn, angry, or combative. Conflicts, especially those fueled by personal issues, discrimination, or trauma, are often driven by these sorts of emotions. Acknowledging those emotions without dismissing or invalidating them will help definitely de-escalate the situation. Now, what would be a proper definition of emotional validation from a psychological point of view would be recognizing and accepting other person's emotional experience without judgment or criticism. I will come here with an example of refugee women. For example, you are mediating a disagreement between 2 women in a refugee shelter. One of them feels that the ethnic group is being discriminated against by other groups in the camp, while the other feels scared because of the violence they witness. Very, very important in order to acknowledge emotions, to offer verbal validation. What could that sound like? I can hear that you're both carrying a lot of pain from your experiences. Your fear and anger are very real, and I respect the challenges that you're facing. Something on the lines of this, it could be absolutely whatever you feel. It should be definitely honest from your side and yeah, transparent. Empathy, another particularity that is important to acknowledge emotions, especially in situations where trauma is present. Saying something like, it's very normal to feel hurt and scared after what you've been through. Let's work together to find a way and move forward. So what you're doing here, you're also involving the person, and you're dignifying and you're acknowledging the resources that they have. And one of the last, but probably not the last particularity, would be neutralizing the situation, reassuring both women that their emotions are valid and that it is a safe space to express them without judgment. Mental health consideration when we talk about acknowledging emotions would be unresolved griefs, survivor's guilt, and loss of identity, very common in people who have fled conflict zones, and they may surface unexpectedly. So creating a space to acknowledge these emotions gently. For instance, you might even say that you can see that there's a lot of anger right now, and that you understand that it comes from a place of deep pain. Let's talk about what's underneath that pain whenever you feel comfortable or want to share something about it. So there's no force to disclose or no insistence. You just let them know that you're available there. In environments where people have experienced trauma, such as post-war communities, people may have intense emotional responses. So acknowledging not just their words, but the deep pain that they may carry, it can be very powerful and healing. A simple statement like, I understand that this situation brings up past trauma for you, it can help them to, it can definitely help them to first feel validated, recognized, and yeah, acknowledged. And we pass to step number 4.
Step number 4 would be identifying underlying needs, and this is very relevant for actually for our daily lives now, not only for conflict situations, because more often than not, but especially in conflict situation, what is expressed is often different from what is truly needed. So people in conflict situations, due to various reasons, may feel, for instance, invisible in their pain or struggle, and they can have difficulties. We can all have these difficulties to express our real needs in conflict situations. So actually, underneath many conflicts are unmet needs. As simple as that. This can be needs for safety, for respect, recognition, fairness, or simply for survival. So it is very critical, let's put it like this, to identify these needs when we try to resolve a conflict. So often what people argue about on the surface can be a reflection of deeper unmet needs. So conflict resolution in this particular case is not just about addressing the positions, but also about addressing the underlying needs. These, as I was saying, may include safety, respect, fairness, autonomy. These are, once again, very important underlying needs. So how can we address them? How can we identify them? First of all, by listening actively. When someone is speaking, we have to focus fully on what they're saying without interrupting or formulating our response immediately without thoroughly listening. We have to pay attention to both the words and the nonverbal cues, as also mentioned before. We have to try and understand not just what is being said, but what is being felt underneath, if possible. And of course, not to make any false assumptions. The best way is to reflect back So, for instance, we can ask, it sounds like you're feeling like this or like that, you know, and then you put the emotion to what you're observing because someone upset you, and then you also become very specific on addressing that particular situation. Isn't that right? So we have to underscore that particular situation and make sure not only that we assume the feeling that's underneath, but also we properly reflect back and ask about that emotion the person is feeling. So another way of identifying underlying needs is by asking open-ended questions. So we encourage deeper exploration of needs by asking questions such as, what would make you feel hurt? Or what do you need from me to resolve this? Another step would be to recognize that emotions often point to other types of unmet needs, such as validation, trust, respect, or connection. And that can only be solved by addressing the conflict can only be solved by addressing these root causes, these underlying needs. One type of exercise, for instance, that we can all do before handling a conflict situation is also to reflect in our private life on our emotions and needs when we are in conflict with ourselves or with someone outside. So we can ask ourselves, what do I need to feel better about this situation? And moving back from us now to an external conflict situation that we might handle, one important crucial step is collaborating on solutions. So first of all, we try to identify the person's needs, right? The underlying needs or the actual needs that are expressed, or both, depending on the situation. And moving from there, we try to work together to find a solution that addresses both sides or all sides, if we're speaking about multiple people involved. So focusing on finding a solution together by meeting the needs of everyone involved, rather than, for instance, assigning blame. For instance, if we're speaking about two young adults that argue about the use of a shared space in a youth center, one feels that their group's needs are always ignored, while the other feels that they're being unfairly blamed for taking up too much space, for instance. How can we identify underlying needs in this particular example? So one thought can be the unmet need for safety, for instance, from the teenager that feels their group's needs are ignored. He might struggle with a deeper sense of insecurity or fear of discrimination. So as a mediator, we can address this by asking questions such as, I hear that you're both upset because it feels like your needs aren't being heard. So let's see together, how can we find a way to ensure that both of you feel safe and valued? And this is one type of situation. Another type of situation of an unmet underlying need can be the need for inclusion and equality. So one of these teenagers might feel that they are excluded, they are not validated in the group setting, something they might have been deprived of in their previous environment. We don't know, we cannot always know. So a mediation approach would be, again, asking certain type of particular questions, such as, what could we do to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to use this space? So let's discuss how we can share it fairly. These are just a few examples of how can we address some types of underlying needs. Of course, the number can be immense. But there are some mental health considerations. You already got used to us pinpointing to some types of mental health considerations when speaking about these steps. In this particular case, we have to keep in mind that people in vulnerable situations and in conflict situation feel the need for validation, for safety, for having a sense of belonging and to be in control over the circumstances. So as a mediator, our work is to uncover these needs, to use open-ended questions like the ones we mentioned, so that we can help the persons involved express their needs more clearly. Keep in mind to recognize all the parts involved, to treat everyone with humanity equally, keeping in mind their physical and spiritual, psychological freedom, because all these are powerful needs that can serve as foundation for building trust, empathy, but also for de-escalating most type of conflicts. So further on, we're going to move to step 5.
Restating the conflict clearly. Restating the conflict in a neutral and non-judgmental way is particularly important for mental health because it helps everyone gain perspective and reduce misunderstandings that can trigger emotional escalation. For example, in a conflict between two people, where one might feel that the other is intentionally trying to steal their food, in reality, the second person is simply, or could be simply, struggling with food insecurity and is trying to get by. Okay, how to restate this conflict in a neutral restatement could be something like, it sounds like there's been a misunderstanding about the food distribution. One of you felt your food was taken, while the other was trying to find something to eat. Is that what's happening here? So what you could do by putting this question and continuing with a follow-up series of, again, questions and statements would be to ensure both parties that understanding each other's position is really important. And you could say, again, something in this way. Both of you have different needs right now. One needs assurance that their resources are safe, and the other one needs help with securing food. Well, let's talk about how we can address both needs. And again, you can include here collaboration, brainstorming for solutions, or literally just, listening both sides. When we talk about mental health consideration, hyperarousal can cause exaggerated reactions, especially in trauma. And you could have, it could be anger or withdrawal. It could be any of these two extremes, or literally a lot of other emotions. Restating the conflict in a very calm, objective tone can help to prevent further escalation. For example, it seems like there's been a misunderstanding about your belongings. Let's clarify what really happened so we can find a solution. Again, pretty much maintain the tone, eye contact, and not a lot of gestures. It can be very intrusive for some people. But underline that you're there present to help them and find a solution. So always, when summarizing, avoid blaming language like you always, she never, and use a neutral language that invites collaboration rather than defensiveness.
Okay, so moving further to the sixth step, let's think together, and I would invite you in this part to actually write also in the chat possible solutions for de-escalating situation, right? So generating solutions basically requires that everyone's emotional needs were heard and were respected, right? So, but we know this doesn't happen all the time. So the mental health challenges of people that are in conflict or in conflict areas, as we already mentioned, anxiety, depression, trauma, should guide the way solutions are crafted. So that's why I was inviting you to write in the chat, because I'm sure you all have different backgrounds. Although we work in NGOs or collaborating in NGOs, we all have different backgrounds that inform the way we give solution depending on the type of NGO we work in, the place we work in, the type of trauma we face in our workplaces, so on and so forth. So this step involves collaborative problem solving, where all parties, you and the persons involved, you as a NGO worker, partake in brainstorming ideas to meet the needs of the persons involved. So once again, we're going to use an example to better show what we mean. So we have two people, again, from different cultural backgrounds that are fighting over cultural misunderstanding, and this can very easily happen. One person feels that their traditions are being disrespected by the other. So one possible way of how to generate solutions will be either by offering an inclusive solution, or by focusing on collaboration. What it means to offer an inclusive solution. For instance, asking, what are some ways we can find common ground on this issue? Maybe we could create a shared space where each one of you can teach the other about their traditions. What do you think? This is one example, one possible out of many. Another solution could be, as I was saying, focusing on collaboration, meaning that we encourage both parts or all parts to think of ways they can share their perspective, rather than impose a type of practice, as I was mentioning, the organizing an event together, or it doesn't matter the type of practice as long as people come together collaborating. So speaking about generating possible solutions, again, we have to keep in mind the mental health consideration, because solutions should offer opportunities for control, meaning to help people regain autonomy over their lives, their environment, and also inclusion. People need to feel included, need to feel heard and seen. So we should offer solutions that allow for shared responsibility or joint leadership, so that people can have their emotional needs met and the conflict can be easily either diffused or reduced. Of course, in more conflicted zones, actually in war zones, solutions might be tied to broader social agreements, such as resource sharing, peace building measures, or equality initiatives. So this doesn't necessarily fall under very specific possible solutions. So you have to be, let's say, creative. Or willing to explore unconventional solutions that meet everyone's needs, of course. So we're going to move to the seventh and last step.
But not the last part of the webinar. Step 7, as you can see it on the screens, agree on a plan of action. Finalizing the plan of action is essential, and mental health support, again, must be embedded in the follow-up. Once solutions are identified, agree on a specific action that both parties will take to resolve the conflict and ensure a lasting piece. For example, in some situation, you may meet with communities where it's very important, the hierarchy and authority. So over there, you could include the elderly to take part of that conversation, of that mediation, okay? This plan should include clear actions, timelines, and follow-up strategies to ensure the solution is implemented effectively. Very important here, you might need to use cultural interpreters and be sure that they understand exactly the steps that should happen. I will give here an example because we created actually examples for each of these steps, just like a small idea, but probably you have more experience and know more about this. For example, a refugee teenager which expresses that they feel unsafe because of bullying in the camp, while the other teenager might be part of the group causing the bullying without realizing the impact. Now, how to agree on a plan in this particular or specific situation? Actionable steps and follow-up, as I've said. First, you can address to the entire group, and because you don't have to separate the people as if one would be the victim and the other one the aggressor. No, you talk to everyone, and you could say something like, we've agreed that the bullying behavior will stop and needs to stop. So for this, we'll organize a youth discussion group next week where everyone can talk about their experiences and work on solutions together. Now, both of you will work with a mentor to ensure that communication is respectful going forward. Follow up. We'll check up and we'll check in at the end of the month to see how things are going and ensure that the atmosphere is improving. Okay, so you'll clearly explain them the steps, but also present it, as I said, to everyone. Now, ongoing support is vital, and this is one of the mental health considerations that you need to take in account, because plans should include ways for people to manage their emotions and to resolve future conflicts constructively. So what we're doing here, we're teaching them as well how to cope from now on and how to teach others. We're sharing, we're learning from this process as well. So incorporate regular checks-in or sessions with a mental health professional or psychologist, if you have there one, to address this underlying trauma or anxiety, and ensuring that the emotional needs are continually addressed. Now, this may sound complicated. In reality, it's even more complicated than you can imagine. And this is the reason why we added 3 essential concepts that happened to most of these people that actually work in this field. They are critical to recognize and to manage, to maintain mental health and professional effectiveness for everyone working in the field. And we're talking here about vicarious trauma, burnout, and compassion fatigue. What means vicarious trauma and how it manifests? It refers to the profound emotional and psychological transformation that occurs when individuals are repeatedly exposed to the traumatic experiences of others. Is it often a cumulative process resulting from empathetic engagement with survivors of trauma? Vicarious trauma can alter one's worldview, sense of safety and trust in others. And it manifests on a cognitive way, emotional, and behavior. For example, cognitive, intrusive thoughts about others' trauma, difficulty concentrating, or persistent negative beliefs about the world. The world is dangerous, for example. You may have feelings of hopelessness, despair, or numbness, hidden anxiety or fear, withdraw from social interaction or avoidance of work-related tasks, or the opposite, over-engagement, working excessively to fix things. And from a physical point of view, you could notice fatigue, insomnia, or somatic symptoms like headaches or stomachache. And for a lot of other people also, there's a loss of meaning or questioning one's purpose. Why am I even doing this? It's that spiritual side. This is extremely relevant for journalists covering war zones, NGO workers supporting survivors of violence, or researchers documenting human rights abuses are particularly vulnerable to vicarious trauma, because over time, it can erode their ability to feel empathy or maintain a balanced perspective. I'm inviting Iolanda to talk about the second one. Yeah.
Actually, we brought these essential concepts because they are very much related to our work. Also as NGO workers, but psychotherapists, psychologists. So I purposely chosen burnout because I believe it's super familiar to all of us. It is that state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress that is more often than not related to work. So how can we characterize it? I'm sure everyone has their own definition for it because it's also a very personal process, but we have some broader lines. Those feelings of being overwhelmed, feeling drained, unable to meet constant demands, or at least how we perceive it from outside, from inside out. So burnout typically, as you know, develops gradually, and it's very much linked with systemic issues that are linked to the high workloads, to the lack of control, or even insufficient support from peers. Burnout can manifest in many ways, in emotional, cognitive, physical, behavioral way. So we can feel criticized, we can feel detachment, we can be irritable, we can lose the motivation or the passion for our work. We can have difficulty making decisions, we can forget things, reduce productivity, we can feel chronic fatigue, frequent illnesses or change in sleep or appetite patterns. We can also procrastinate a lot, maybe increase the use of some substances such as caffeine, alcohol. We can strain away from relationships with colleagues, with friends, with the family. We can become more irritable or disengaged. So we consider this as particularly relevant for the professionals present here, and it's an invitation for you to, to maybe share, if you feel comfortable enough, your experience with this, because one of the steps why one of the ideas of speaking, highlighting these essential concepts is not only looking on the outside, but also looking on the inside and how our work affects us in this type of humanitarian work, NGO work, so on and so forth. So the relentless nature of our work, combined with sometimes with very limited resources, can lead to this to burnout, to this sense of detachment, and we're going to speak further on the strategies, some of the strategies that can help us cope with it. So I'll pass it on to the last concept.
Compassion fatigue, another state of emotional and physical exhaustion that reduces one's ability to empathize or care for others. Often referred as the cost of caring, and is common among those in the helping profession. Compassion fatigue can develop suddenly, especially after intense exposure to others' suffering. And it is manifested in an emotional way, like with feelings of helplessness, sadness, or emotional numbness, reduced ability to feel joy or satisfaction. difficulty concentrating, intrusive thoughts about others' suffering, or a sense of being worn out. Chronic fatigue, headaches, or gastrointestinal issues. Avoidance of clients or tasks, decreased productivity or irritability with those innate. Again, withdrawal from loved ones and conflict with colleagues. Now, people who provide direct aid or volunteer supporting refugees or even researchers that are interviewing trauma survivors are particularly susceptible to compassion fatigue. The constant demand to empathize with others' pain can deplete the emotional reserves. And very, very important, I want to talk a little bit about the key differences and overlaps between vicarious trauma, burnout, and compassion fatigue. Vicarious trauma focuses on the transformation of one's worldview due to exposure to trauma. Okay? Burnout results from chronic workplace stress and systemic issues. Compassion fatigue arises from the emotional toll of caring for others in distress. Now, unfortunately, all these three conditions can coexist and exacerbate one another. For example, we can have a journalist covering conflict zones who might experience vicarious trauma from witnessing atrocities, burnout from relentless deadlines, and compassion fatigue from empathizing with survivor.
As I was promising before, we have here a number of pretty common sense, let's say, strategies for prevention and self-care that I hope and I'm sure you already practice. And are very much related with the 7 steps for conflict de-escalation, because actually being aware of this protects ourselves as practitioners, but also protects the people that we're working with and serving. So first of all, self-awareness, regular check-ins with ourselves to recognize the early signs of the 3 concepts that we've seen before, the VT, the burnout, and compassion fatigue. Setting boundaries, setting clear limits, for instance, on our working hours and the exposure to traumatic material after these working hours or even within the working hours. Having a sound support system, meaning connecting with peers, with supervisors, mental health professionals for debriefing and emotional support. Self-care, which goes hand in hand also with self-awareness, prioritizing activities that restore our energy, such as exercise, hobbies, mindfulness practices. Training, constantly training, but also within limits about the topics that we're working with. So participating in workshops on trauma-informed care and stress management, for instance. And the last but not the least, and super important because it goes hand in hand with actually what we're doing here, and we're so appreciative of SCI for this initiative and actually for caring for all of us through these type of initiatives. Organizational change, advocate for systemic changes such as manageable workloads, adequate resources, access to mental health services, this inside our organizations, but also within the NGO system. And yeah, I would leave it here. Hope we can discuss more about this in the Q&A session. But first we're gonna before going to the Q&A session, we want to speak about some takeaway actions.
To wrap up today's session, I would like, to be honest, to remember that mental health is interwoven with conflict de-escalation, recognizing and addressing the trauma, stress, and mental health challenges that both youth or youth workers or any other professional faces is essential for this successful mediation and de-escalation of the conflict. So always prioritize emotional safety and psychological first aid for all involved. Safeguarding, okay? Use the 7 steps to conflict de-escalation to facilitate healing, empathy, and connection. Ensure that the people with whom you work and yourself have access to mental health support when needed. There are plenty of resources. You're going to have later on some of these resources that you can access for free, train yourself, read all sorts of guides as well. So that it can support you when needed. And remember that conflict resolution, it's not about eliminating the conflict, but about managing it in a way that promotes mutual respect and understanding. Because recognizing and addressing this condition is not a sign of weakness, but a necessary step to sustain your well-being and effectiveness in high-stress environments. With other words, by taking care of yourself, you're better equipped to continue your vital work in supporting others.
And because most of our work, also when presenting, it's offering a bit of our knowledge, but also learning from the others, from you in this case. We ask you to reflect together on these steps, on this type of practices, and we invite you. I hope you have questions, but also we have questions for you once more. And we invite you to reply in the chat to these and to interact directly as well. So we move towards the last step, which is the Q&A with these 3 questions. What are some experiences you had in working with refugee youth or people in conflict areas and with trauma histories? Another one would be, how do you manage the emotional and mental health dynamics that emerge in conflicts? And this is related with that part of the concepts that we're developing and the self-care. And once again, how do you take care of yourself? If you can share with us what works for you, of course, if you're comfortable doing so. So thank you all for listening so patiently. 1 hour already. Now we're waiting for your questions very curiously. I'll stop sharing my screen. The presentation will be later on shared with you, as well as some resources that we're identifying, as Adrian was already mentioning. Yes, so I will leave it to you. Thank you. Let's move a bit to the chat as well.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very enlightening, and it's a very necessary work and situation to address in a lot of workplace and NGOs, and yeah, it's definitely some steps that are necessary, and thank you so much to be that clear about it. And I feel that a lot of us will use all those things. I already have a question in the Q&A, and also before that I want to thank all the people that are sharing their experience in the chat. Thank you so much as well. It's very nice to see you able to reflect and share this with all of us here. Mm-hmm. So one question is, how do you listen without judgment in situations where the opinion of a person really doesn't align with your deep-rooted belief?
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and you'll meet this a lot, because when you work in this field, you'll see people with different belief systems and values, and it's very hard not to judge. It's very hard not to impose your own perspective or your own point of view. I've worked quite a lot with refugee teenagers and asylum seekers, and one of the things that I did in order to get better at this, because believe me, I was judgmental and I had cognitive biases where we were full of it, was a small tip that my manager gave me, and it's called reflective practice. So what you do and what you could do is, after you finish your work or in a particular day, you have a particular issue with one of these people, is to think a little bit about what triggers in you, what emotional triggers in you that particular behavior or reaction that person had. First. Second, realize that it's not about you. It might be something that they manifest due to the stress, anxiety, delusion, or numbness, or I don't know, trauma that they experienced. There are a lot of unconscious triggers and emotional triggers that we have. It could be smell, it could be the tone of voice. It might remind me of your father, and it might trigger me. It could be the image, the face, the look, and it could be also all sorts of gestures that we do that can trigger someone with something. So it's about figure out first what particular triggered you. It's a particular thought. It's a particular way of saying something. It's the belief, but what's about that belief? That it's making you feel how? Angry, frustrated, entitled to teach them the good and bad, or what's really happening. So reflective practice would mean to actually have a proper look on how you feel and then question some of those thoughts or ideas and speak with someone who might see the things from a different perspective and show you, or talk with someone elderly from that particular community to understand better that norms or cultural norms or that belief system before literally replying or reacting to what that person is doing. It's complex, but you'll have to realize that it's not about you, it's about the other person. You're there to listen, to support, to help, not to judge. And by being there present and receiving what the other person is sharing, you can learn something else about yourself. Does this make sense?
Thank you so much. That was a very clear answer, in my opinion. We have another question. What do we do if the person has been drinking, taking drugs, or is in a state of decompensation?
Okay, a lot of them will do that. Sorry, I'm answering again.
No, go.
A lot of them will do that because they really need to cope with the trauma and with the anxiety and stress they have. And some of them don't know other options or other ways to do and handle that. So one way would be addressing that particular behavior. Hey, Johnny or Eve, I've been seeing that lately you're starting to drink a little bit more and you're getting drunk a little bit more often. Is there any particular reason that you're doing this, or you just, I don't know, lost control, or you're just experiencing this for the first time? So you address the behavior. Second, if there's anything that you want to talk about or want to share that is causing you a little bit of stress, anxiety, or fear, please let me know. I'm here for this particular reason. I'm here to listen. I'm here to help you find solution if there's any solution, or I don't know, to solve whatever is happening in your life now. So being available for them, addressing the behavior, and letting them know as well that you can see that they've been sad or frustrated or angry lately, and that their behavior, for example, is very different when they started to drink or consume substances than before. I've seen that you're a very calm person, but when you're drinking or taking, I don't know, cannabis or whatever, your behavior shifts, changes. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything happening there? So you need to give them space to process, to think. And what you'll see is that once you build rapport with the person, they're going to start slowly asking questions, and there's going to be a time when they're going to share exactly what they're experiencing and even tell you that they want to stop. Okay, because you can't just go straight, no, you're drinking, you need to stop, you should not do that. That would be judgmental, and we don't understand exactly what's really happening. It could be a mistake. They could have been drinking, I don't know, a Fanta orange, and instead it was alcohol in it and got drunk. So there are a lot of stuff that might have happened. So please don't jump to conclusion before, getting exactly what's happening from them. And definitely once they know that that's a problem and they want to work on that, then you can address it to substance misuse specialist or psychological trained person that is able to help them cope and, I don't know, find support groups and so on. There are other things that you can do about it, but only when they're ready to work on their issue.
I wanted not to add to this, but I wanted to thank you, and I know you already did so, Eve, at the beginning. I really wanted to thank you because while Adrian was speaking, I was scrolling down through the chat, and I really appreciate your involvement and sharing personal experiences. So Anna, Marco, Claudia, Ben Shaib, Youssef, Avag, I'm sure I haven't mentioned everyone, but thank you very much for interacting and sharing personal stories. It really means a lot.
And I see there are a lot of people actually using mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and hiking. Yeah, Anna. So some of them you're already using tools. Some of them you've used CBT, one of these psychotherapeutic techniques, reduction, inner peace, prevention. There's a lot of cool stuff here. I'm glad to see it. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, there was actually a question in the chat, like from Marco. When in the de-escalation process, someone is trying to act on their needs by bringing you on their side, trying to make you act on other people, on an opposing party. On how is that unpacked when they seem to insist a lot on this, and it seems difficult to make space for the de-escalation process to happen? I would guess the question is like, how do you act in this situation?
So this is no, sorry.
No,
This can be a bit tricky as well, because they try to not just to attach, because there's going to be attachment involved after a while, and they're going to try to get some favors by behaving at the beginning, this and that, in some cases. And again, you have to understand that there might be a lot of unmet needs there. And when, for example, in some cases, we received an amount of jackets, winter jackets, and we had 16 of these young people, and we had 12 jackets. So it was quite challenging at the beginning to see who's going to take what. So what we did in that situation, in order not to create that favoritism, was to bring everyone there and tell them that this is the situation. Honesty, transparency. Look, guys, unfortunately, we've got 12 jackets. We're going to have the money for the other 4 in a week's time. For now, these are the ones that we have. I want you to involve and decide between of you who should have these ones now. Because some of you might have the jacket already, or might have a friend who could give you one, or whatever. So we try to solve this situation by letting them know that we can't favor one part, because by doing that, you're not fulfilling your part. We're speaking about integrity here and some sort of ethics, with what you're doing. And you need to be honest and transparent with them. And believe me that they really appreciate. And they'll know how to prioritize, the elderly, the kids, the women, the pregnant, whatever. They know what to do, but you need to be honest. It's going to be frustrating at the beginning. And again, resources for NGOs in conflict areas are always limited. So it's not going to be enough never going to be enough, but you can help them and empower them to have a little bit of control with that, and help them decide. So you're not favoring anyone, you're involving them with a reality that it is. We've got 12 jackets. So it can be done something like that.
Thank you. We have another question in the Q&A. How does the location impact the conflicts and its resolutions?
I mean, I can pick up a bit on this one, and I'll go back to what we were saying at the beginning with the locus of initiation. And first of all, I would say think about, doing this exercise to think about where you were born, the family you were born, the village, the town you were born, the country you were born in, how this influenced you growing up, studying in a certain environment, homeschooling, or going to a particular school that was in the outskirts of the city, or was the first one, ranked the first one in the city or in the country, how this impacted you. So scaling this and thinking how this impacted your growth. The same happens with, this is a very basic example, but this happens with all of us, and to this particular situation adds a number of other variables that appear when we are in conflict situation, in conflict areas. So we always have to look at the surroundings. What are the languages that are spoken there? What are the ethnical minorities? In which area of the country I am? How does that impact the fact that I'm close to the sea, the fact that I'm close to the mountain, the fact that I'm right next to a border? What does it mean, for instance, to be, because we're based in Romania, what does it mean to be close to the border with Ukraine? This is a very basic example. No? So the surroundings gives us important clues about how people might feel in particular situations or in that environment. So by this also gives us a bit more information on how to deal with specific types of conflicts, because you can have conflicts that come from that specific geographical surrounding, meaning also ethnic conflicts, regional conflicts, border conflicts, so on and so forth. So and because of this, we can have underlying conflicts, and we can have also very spontaneous conflicts, but I would say there's no conflict or war zone or conflict zone that doesn't have underlying conflicts that are given by the geographical setting, and by geographical I have to take into consideration all the historical, cultural aspects. And when speaking about the locus of initiation, we are thinking, I'm thinking mostly about the decolonial thinkers here. So we can introduce this also in the resources. I don't know if you want to add to this.
No, I think
I hope it was clear. If not, we can, of course, answer more on it, develop more.
Yes, thank you. That's very interesting. We also have a question on how to react to those who use violent and humiliating language toward us. I think that's an interesting question. I would just link it to also how to address and identify hypervigilance.
It goes very, very well with one of the steps we've been talking about, acknowledging emotions. I can see you're furious here. I can see you're angry. Okay, is there anything you want to talk about and help me understand if there's because there might be a sense of injustice there. There might be a frustration, or in some cases, it might be psychotic episodes. We had that. I've seen that. because of PTSD as a post-traumatic stress disorder is quite a complex one, and you've got CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and some of the survivors, okay, might get very easily triggered by a lot of other stuff that we don't even know, and nobody knows, and especially when living in small spaces, sharing it with a lot of other people, they can easily be triggered and become very aggressive. So one of the things that you can do and should do from a safeguarding point of view is, first, make sure that the person that, for example, if it's between more people, the person that it's attacked is safe, okay? That you are safe, and then try to talk with that person and see exactly what's really happening, okay? And if there's any sense of injustice, as I said, or he's been hurt one way or another, or is something happening with him or her. And then the other thing that you could do is kind of ask them as well if they need a little bit of space, and if they want to, or if this is something that we could talk a little bit later. You could also try, in some cases, to take them out of the context. Let's go in the garden and talk a little bit about this. Okay, keeping your distance, not having very rush or quick gestures like I'm doing with my hands. No, calm voice, calm and steady voice. Don't keep eye contact. That can be very intrusive, and in some cases, it's something that triggers them. But with that calm voice, acknowledge the feeling that they're having and ask if there's an unmet need. And if that doesn't work, in some cases, you'll have to let them know that, okay, because your behavior is escalating, we're going to need to stop this. Okay, I'll leave you here to calm down. If not, I'm going to be obligated to talk with the security so that you can calm down a little bit. Okay, so there's that part as well. But they'll have to know, it's not that you're going to snitch or bring someone. No, you let them know that if this continues, okay, and they don't want to collaborate or to talk what's all about, then you'll need to take some action. Your role is to support the people around yourself and that person as well. If we're talking about an aggressive behavior which could escalate towards suicide, okay, or self-harm, then again, it's a different game, where it's a different situation where you'll have to be very careful with the things that they use, or weapons or whatever they have, and in a calm voice, making sure that nobody around, is just you and them, and tell them this is a private and safe space, and that you're there to listen what's really happening. In the meantime, somebody else is calling for an ambulance or medical doctors, or someone who could give the first aid in case of. But everything it's by being honest and letting them know what's gonna happen, what you're gonna do, what are you there for, and what you can do for them if they're willing to share. But yeah, it can happen a lot, but you'll need to protect yourself. Check a little bit more, and probably should add on the resources about safeguarding, a concept that I believe anyone should fully integrate and understand how it works and what's all about. Okay.
Thank you. I also have a question. So, how to neutralize a situation without diminishing the experience of the person, or without making feel that?
The experience of the person being the other colleague or someone that's involved in a conflict situation, without being the person you're working for, so to say. I would say by acknowledging their experience, if you're aware of the experience, or if you're not aware. For instance, now we are we know, we assume, as I said at the beginning, that most of the people here are working in NGO settings, right? So I'm assuming from the beginning that everyone has lots of experience, or if not, it doesn't. If people don't have that much experience, they have diverse experience, or even the personal experience informs everyone to have valid opinions, about what we're presenting, for instance. So a way of not diminishing someone would be in conflict situation will be, for instance, acknowledging their, for instance, personal experience, their background, validating therefore what they are saying, validating their past, validating their feelings, as well as for a peer, right? Validating their specific, because we assume we know more about the person, validating more in depth, using very specific words like, I know you worked for these organizations, for instance, or you work with this type of cases, so your experience is extremely important and valid. Nevertheless, or in this particular case, I think my opinion is we can address this perhaps in a different way, or this is your position based on your experience. My position based on my experience is the other one. The fact that we have different experiences, different position, doesn't mean they have to be necessarily conflicting. So I don't know if you like.
Yeah, so yeah, pretty much what you said, but what you could also do as well is, and this is very important, you'll have to have team meetings, you'll have to have debriefs, you'll have to meet with everyone. It's not just the job of the psychologist or the journalist or the reporter, whatever. Everyone is a team in the end when they go and work in this area. So everyone should kind of share a little bit about their perspectives and how they cope with things and what they believe about certain things that happen around. So in debriefs, when you explain people that there are certain procedures that should be like that, you also have training in these particular areas, okay, for people who go or should have training. So we're doing this, but where you give specifics, where you introduce them in the cultural norms of that area, and when it's about more people, again, adding that flexible or optional, that okay, there might be more ways to do this or to solve this. It doesn't mean that yours is not right. It's not probably appropriate for this particular situation, but because I worked more with this person or with this ethnic group, I believe that. But I'm considering your point of view as well, and I'm glad that you're sharing something different, and I think it's useful for the entire group. So it's a process in which we all learn from each other, and nobody's totally right. So by acknowledging that, yeah, everyone can make mistakes, and everyone should be open to learn and adapt in these situations. With these team meetings or debriefs, it's very, very useful. And then with those regular checks up with how are you feeling about this? What are your thoughts? What are your emotions? Physically, how you feel? It's important.
I will add to this something that came from my experience as a researcher. Please always keep yourselves informed without assumptions, if possible, about the conflict that you're working, about the context that you're working in. I mean, you're going to a new country, for instance, for shorter periods to do research. You're not very familiarized at the beginning, but make sure to pick up on any information about the cultural norms of the country you're going to, or the specific region you're going to. We cannot always speak the language of the places we're going to work in. Nevertheless, picking up a few words of gratitude might help. But then again, be very aware of how you should dress, how you should act in social situations. And I'm not saying this presumptuously, because I'm sure this is well known, but I'm saying this from a place of not being fully aware of it at the beginning. I mean, in theory, yes, but in practice, it's completely different. And this can have a real impact, for instance, in the social dynamics between different social groups or sorry, men, women.
And actually take advantage and ask the people from there, the right people from there, because they are the one who can help you to explain you exactly what in this particular area is happening, not just from what you've learned from other specialists working or from the books. People who are in that situation.
Right.
Okay. We can't hear you, Eve. Sorry.
Yes, I think all the questions are have been answered. So thank you so much for that. And we are perfectly on time. It's 7:30, so we can close this webinar. Thanks everyone for joining us, for sharing the experiences in the chat, as we said, and many thanks again to you, Iolanda and Adrian, for sharing your expertise. It was very clear, very comprehensive, and we learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We left as well our contact details in case you need extra information, you want to put more questions, I don't know, you're more curious about, things related to, trauma or psychological first aid and any mental health resources. We're sharing as well as others share with us.
Yes, and thank you so much as well. We forgot to mention at the beginning, but I'm probably gonna get it now from the name that stands close to our name, South Talks. It's an NGO that we started recently, focused on mental health, as well for NGO workers and peace workers. So addressing exactly what, among others, what we're addressing today in this webinar. So we'd love to keep in touch, to learn from all of you, to collaborate. So please keep close. Thank you so much for your patience, for the questions, for opening up, and for bearing it with us. Thank you so much, SCI and the entire team, Claudia, Eve, and Christina.
And all the others. All the guys behind there. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And the participants as well. Thank you very much. And have a pleasant evening.
Thank you for sharing your direct contact. And from our side, we will contact all the participants who registered with a follow-up email, sharing the recording and the resources that Adrian and Iolanda will share with us for you. Last piece of information, our last webinar of this series would be on the 24th of April with Loretta. So we hope to see you there, and we will share more information later on that. Thank you again, and have a good evening, morning, wherever you are.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you all present. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good evening.